Faith asked me if I would share a quick story on what God is doing here in Kenya. And when I think of the many stories to tell, I can really only think of one that is standing out the most. When I first planned this trip, I was actually supposed to be coming home today on January 5th. A little while ago, I decided to extend this stay until March. Right around that same time, the question of why am I still here started coming in my mind. And as Christmas drew nearer, I actually almost bought a ticket home and decided to come home before January. God answered that question in a really unique way a few days later. I was on my way into town to spend some time with some of the street boys I had built a relationship with when this boy, maybe 18, maybe 19 years old, came up to me. And I had never seen him before. This was the first time I'd ever met him. He didn't speak English very well, but what I could understand was he had a friend who was sick. And I'd heard that same story many times from a lot of people in town. And it's usually a scam. They usually just want your money. But as I looked at this kid, I could tell that something was different. He had a look in his eyes that I really have never seen in a street kid before. That look was fear and concern for someone else. So I could tell he was telling the truth about his friend, and I asked him to take me to him. His friend's name is Peter. Peter LaJour. He's 23 years old. And as we walked up the street to find his friend, he was just laying there in the street. When I looked at him, his knees, both of them, were swollen about the size of softballs, maybe a little bit bigger. His wrists were about the same size. And he had fresh cuts up and down his entire body. His face was bruised. And he was barely breathing. And I remember looking around, and there was a crowd around him. But instead of helping this boy, they just laughed at him. And they left him there. And they didn't want to help him at all. So he had two friends with him. Together, we got this boy onto a motorcycle to go to the hospital. And the entire time, people just walked by and laughed at him. And it just broke my heart to see how many people saw this boy hurting and would not help him. So when we got him to the hospital, it was a little bit of a fight to get the doctors to treat him. And it turns out he had a couple of breaks in his leg and just a lot of bruising. And after a few days, he was released from the hospital and is now doing a lot better. And I think out of that experience, God just really showed me what a sense of purpose there is. No one else would help that child. But it was such an incredible opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to say, I'll help him. I'll be there for him. And that's just one of the many stories I could share about my time in the street with some of these boys. I mean, just there's such a hope that you see when you look at these children now. From attitudes that are changing in the kids to the town, and how their hearts and minds are changing towards these boys. And it's definitely a slow process, but it's a process that is beginning, and I'm really excited and looking forward to seeing how that process continues. So that's what's happening here in Kenya. I look forward to sharing more stories when I get home in March, and I'll see you then.